Hello and welcome to The Coach's Point of View. It's a show where we talk to three managers or head coaches to discuss the main talking points in women's football over the last 7 days. And today I'm joined by three managers, three women's National League managers. We've got Louis Sowe, who is the West Brom head coach. How are you doing, Louis?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
You there, Louis? I'm not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. We've got Jordan Wimpenny. You've got Jordan Wimpenny, the Huddersfield Town manager. How are you doing, Jordan? You've been a busy boy today.
We have. Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. You've been telling me you got a new signing, so that's been keeping you busy. Just going to tell you, we're filming this early on a Saturday morning, so it's great of the guys coming on. And finally, we've got Jay Sadler, who's the Portsmouth head coach. How are you doing, Jay?
Yeah, not too bad. Tell yourself.
I'm not too bad. You got kids duty today, so multitasking. I mean,
yeah,
fantastic. But it actually just goes to show that, at the Women's National League, the players and the managers, they've got, their own lives and careers, and they're juggling managing and playing with other jobs and their other things in life. So we've got load of stuff to talk about, and sadly, I'm gonna have to start with Jay. Now, I spoke to Jay a few days ago, and to arrange this show, and he's a Liverpool fan, so it must have been the day after Liverpool had played. I'm a City fan, so obviously, there's no rivalry there, Jay. So I just had to mention and start ribbing him that Liverpool had got beat. And then he brought the news that Portsmouth were going to be kicked out of the FA Cup for fielding an illegible player. I've got to be honest, that floored me. That totally floored me, and I've got nothing to do with Portsmouth. I think that kind of took away my vim and vigor and all my mood from the Champions League, because you realise what it's going to mean to the players who've worked so hard and everything else to get there, to get kicked out like this on a let's say an admin error. So I'm going to bring Jordan in. Sorry, I'm going to bring Jay in and ask him, what it was like and what's happened and how did the players feel and how are you going to bring them back up?
Yeah. So first off, the club have taken accountability. It's a simple oversight. The fact we've had 3 months of inactivity. One of our players that we signed in November, she played a prelim game for Southampton about 7 months ago, and it was one of a few games she played since leaving Southampton and joining us. So it was something that she didn't remember, something that the club, with all the extra COVID protocol, I think there was 6 extra pages in the rule book of COVID protocol to adhere to, and the excitement and jubilation of actually coming back in for a game, and it wasn't going to be a coin toss. And I think we just got lost in the emotion of it all, and we simply the powers that be above us unfortunately made a slight error, one that wasn't made in any malice. We were live streaming a game to nearly 800 people, so we weren't doing it on purpose. But for the girls, I'll be honest, it was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do in a long time. These girls have had 118 days without a game. They've obviously kept themselves motivated, kept themselves focused, and they've stayed professional, done their bit. Likewise, the management staff, they've done their bit. We've prepped the girls. We've got them all ready for that Cheltenham game. And ultimately, as a whole unit, it did take extra time, and fair play to Cheltenham, but we've won the game. So the relief, the ecstasy of winning, especially in the manner, and then getting yourself ready to prep for Gillingham the next day. We were clipping all the Cheltenham game ready to give to the girls and started our prep on Gillingham. And then to hear that was, well, at first I was like, nah, they're pulling my leg. That can't be right. Surely not. And then we knew we went in for a hearing with the FA. We provided our evidence. We thought there might be a little bit of sympathy with everything that's gone on, but ultimately we didn't want to set a precedent for the rest of the teams in the competition. And they've decided to expel us from the competition. So a difficult one. One I can understand. It is a difficult. Listen, it's hard for the FA. They've got to be fair across the board. But I think it was the hardest things for the players. I genuinely still feel gutted for the players now. We haven't trained this week. We're just giving the girls the week off, and we'll be back next week with a full kind of games program, trying to build in just to start our prep for next season.
Yeah, when you told me on the phone, I thought you were pulling my leg, just trying to, get away from that Liverpool result and City winning. And I thought, yeah, you must be kidding me. And then when I realised you're serious, it was like, it's for people in the game, and I expect other managers might feel the same. They feel gutted for you, and I felt gutted at the time. And it's like, what do you say? And it must have been obviously really difficult for you. I guess it was you who had to tell the players.
Yeah. I found out on Monday. It's a really weird question. Like you said, we've all got jobs outside. So on the Monday, it was bank holiday. So I'd just done the tip run. Come home from the tip run thinking, next minute I've got my club secretary and my chairman in my garden. I'm thinking, right, there's two things going on here. Either I'm getting sacked or something's gone on. and yeah, when they told me, it just dropped it. It felt, I just felt numb. I genuinely felt numb. I was thinking, how am I going to tell the players? How would you tell these players that some of them, after so long, have put their bodies put the bodies on the line? 120 minutes in what was down on the south coast. We had nice sun down there. It was physically, it was a hard, draining game. So to tell them I just sent a voice note. I just let kind of my words roll out. My emotion probably rolled out onto it as well. And then, nothing from that. We have had a lot of support from managers. I'll give credit. We had a few managers that have rang and dropped messages. Obviously, at the end of the day, that we've made an error. So we've only got ourselves to blame as a football club, and we've got to take accountability, make sure it doesn't happen again. But there have been good support, and the Cheltenham manager rang me, and we had a real good conversation about it. And even he was a little bit like, well, the game's won and lost on a football pitch. He feels like it's a hard one to take for Cheltenham because in his words, they lost the game and they don't feel like they deserve the opportunity to play Gillingham. But at the end of the day, they've got that opportunity. They've got to go and take it. And as hard as it's sad to say, they're one game now away from playing Arsenal, which is probably any National League manager's dream, to try and put your players and pit your wits against the best. And it wasn't meant to be, but hopefully we'll have future success at the club. So that's all we've got to kind of look for now, try and find any positives and move on. Yeah.
I mean, this sort of thing does happen. It happens obviously in the men's game, happens in the women's game, and it keeps happening. It's happened for so many years. I'm definitely well older than all you three guys, and I remember it happened many, many years ago. So I'm trying to think, how can they stop this from happening? Could you do something like, maybe this is unfair, exclude the prelims, and it just starts from the first round proper? I don't know. What could they do to make it easier to not make these, or not easier? What can they do to stop making these mistakes? Because it's not. I wouldn't pin the blame just on the clubs. It's the clubs who have to do all the admin and stuff. But surely the FA can do something to help you guys out.
Yeah, and we take full accountability as a football club. We're not putting any blame on any organisation, any governing body. Yes, there could be things that could help us. We put back in Portsmouth men. They played an FA Cup game a few years back against West Ham. West Ham fielded an ineligible player, and they replayed the fixture. Liverpool, we did it in a League Cup. The men's, they got fined. And then you're looking at, I know we're going on to a little bit more detail, but Slavia Prague have been accused of racism, yet they're allowed to continue in a competition. Yet we've made an oversight of an admin error from 7 months ago and have been kicked out and expelled. It puts a lot of things into perspective. I do think maybe they should separate the prelims and the proper rounds like they do in the men's game, and like the FA have subsequently done on their graphics, where any players who've scored any goals in the prelim rounds, they haven't been included on that graphic, have they? So are they separating it for one and not separating it for another? And these are the questions, because I feel like as a football club, one aspect in the National League, we kind of get branded as grassroots, and then when it suits, we get branded as elite, and there needs to be some clarity between it. And I think this would subsequently help with the FA Cup, with other organisations, if we kind of knew what boat we sat in. But like I said, there are a lot of questions you can ask and things that can improve, but ultimately one thing that needs to improve is we make sure that this oversight doesn't happen again at our football club, and then it's taken out of our hands, really, isn't it? So that's the only thing we can do, learn from it.
I mean, personally, I was trying to think, how can the FA help? I mean, what can they do? And one idea I had was, they must have, and it requires a little bit of input from their side, and maybe that's why they don't want to do it, because someone's going to have to do some coding and some software for this. But just have like a database where you can, and then you put the onus on the clubs. every month or whenever you get buy players, you can just put them in that database and it chucks out whether they're eligible to play in games, or when they're eligible to play. They must have stuff for suspensions, because obviously clubs can have that same problem if someone's suspended. And I'm thinking more of the men's game, but I guess it'll apply here as well. Can you be sent off in one competition and be suspended for another? I don't know how it all works. So surely they could, it's just really a club would have a list of all their players, chuck it into the database. It gives out the results, and if there's a mistake, and it's on the FA side, then they replay the game or let you off. But there has to be some more assistance, because especially the National League clubs, you've not got massive budgets, you've not got massive resources. A lot of people are doing stuff voluntarily. So that's just my 2 pence. I think there needs to be more. The clubs need to maybe do a little bit more and have with all the protocols you've got already. But it's adding an extra couple of lines. But maybe the governing body has to say, look, how can we help? It's not just, can we write something in all the protocols that whoever at the club in doing the admin, it reads it and applies it. And it's not just up to the club to interpret the rules. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. But I hope there's some answer.
The RFU as a software that the rugby union, they have a software for all grassroots teams where you can simply type in a name and it comes up with all the eligibility. But what the FA said to us was they've got the database, they've got a massive software and kind of Bible of years of archive of all the data. So if you want it, you ring them up and then they'll tell you. And it was, again, something that we could have done, but we didn't, because we had other things that we prioritised. So
I'd be interested to see how the FA would react if 72 clubs admin people ring them up asking for information on 20 players. That sounds like an archaic system. It sounds like something that I'm going back to my previous career back in the 90s, and you could have got some software to do this. Some interrogation software. That's about 95, 96. So, a long time ago. I think there's something that could be done. Yeah, giving a bit of my age away, but I think there's a lot more could be done, and I think the FA have to step up. They're the custodians of the game, men's and women's, and they've got to treat people equally. And it's something we're going to talk about in a little while about treating players fairly and equally. So, as I said, once again, absolutely gutted. I'm going to ask the other guys, because obviously they're still in the FA Cup, and ask them what it's like to return to action. So I'll start with Louis. If you start with you, Louis, what's it been like to return to action in the FA Cup?
I think it's been great. Just to get back on the pitch, just do what we all enjoyed. Like, it's our relief. I've seen social media; it's been buzzing with results, even if they've lost it. Even if teams have lost, they've accepted it and just moved on and said, "Do you know what? It's good to just get back on the grass." As coaches, do what we love doing in terms of coaching, and then players just enjoy playing. So there's definitely been a buzz I've seen on social media that everyone's delighted to be back, and for us to pick up a result last week was good for West Brom. And it just keeps our season alive a little bit, which obviously was the aim last week. So no, it was good.
Fantastic. I mean, what's it like? Were you worried about injuries? Because obviously you've had you've not been playing for so long, and suddenly now you're back playing, and you've got an intense game within a week. And then you've got another intense game coming up. So do you worry about injuries and how you get your players through and keep them fit?
Yeah, it's definitely something we've had to manage this week. I think after last week's game, we didn't, like Jay's team, we didn't play 120 minutes, but we played 90 minutes. And to be fair, I had to make subs in the game. There's people that were just feeling their hamstrings a little bit, and that we've had to kind of manage that load. So it has definitely been tough to go have 3 months off and then straight into a competitive FA Cup game on 2 training sessions. It's definitely been tough to manage, and hopefully that would just start easing off as the weeks go on and we get back to normality in terms of 2 nights a week training and games, whether that's friendlies, a pre-season programme. So yeah, it's definitely been tough to manage this week. We've definitely found 1 or 2 players have felt it.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Jordan in. He's been sitting there patiently. Bring you in, Jordan. I mean, what's it been like for you as well? And obviously today, I think you signed a player, so you've been busy with that. There's so much going on in such a short space of time. You know, coming back to training, playing the FA Cup and playing again. Possibly, if you get through, playing again next week and maybe the week after. It's a really intense period of time for you guys.
Yeah, so for us, our situation was a little bit different because we actually played our FA Cup tie a lot sooner before the lockdown had just passed. So we played Liverpool Feds, I think it was back in January now. So our game was already played. So when we look at obviously returning, we had the 2 training sessions, and obviously I knew that the teams were going to go and play in the FA Cup last weekend, and for us to still have a game was important because, you know, the guys will agree there's nothing better than playing a game of football. You can train as much as you like, you can put as many sessions on as you like, but they need game time. So we arranged the friendly against Stockport last week, and, you know, we were able to give the players that time on the pitch. Similar to Louis, we had players that were, you know, feeling it after a long time out, and we had to rotate players and be mindful of the game that we've got tomorrow and just look after them. I mean, we have got a lot of older players, a lot of experienced players, so they know their bodies very well and they know how to manage them, what works for them, what doesn't. So within that, we have been managing them through training, through this week in particular, because for us, we know that tomorrow will pose its own sort of threats to us, and we need to make sure that everyone's fighting fit. And obviously on the back of that, we did have an injury in the week that unfortunately one of our players has we found out torn a hamstring. So she won't be back with us now probably until pre-season. So on the back of that, we had made a new signing that's been announced this morning. So Paige has joined us in our defensive line and hopefully wants to, you know, come in and make a positive impact and add to what we've got already. But, you know, for us, and I was thinking about Jay's situation, for having those times out that we've had, such a long time away, and, you know, to come back, and obviously we were all disappointed with the league decision, for them to give the girls an opportunity to focus on FA Cup. So, you know, even for us having a focus on that, I couldn't imagine, you know, what Portsmouth would be going through at this moment in time, because it's difficult for everybody. You know, it's just great that we can still be in a position where we can play. So, you know, if we do get through, then, you know, we could end up meeting Louis in the following week if results go the way they go. So we're just in a fortunate position where we can keep these games going.
Yeah, and it must have been great to come back, even if it was a friendly, and score, if I remember correctly, a ton of goals. You must, I think, did you beat them? Was it 8-2 or?
We played Stockport pre-season, and it was 2-1 at their place, close game. And I liked the way they played. So it was important for us to play them again, because obviously, if you look at pre-season to now, it's a long time. The team's settled. They found a way of playing. You know, for us to go and play them again, because of the problems that they caused us, they played a completely different shape, different system, and it was something that we don't always come up against. So I thought it would be a good test going into the upcoming game. We were able to get some goals.
Plenty of goals. Do you want to shout out any players who did well in that game?
I wouldn't do that individually. Collectively, everyone did well. I wouldn't do that individually. Yeah, I mean, look, for us, we've had to change a lot since last season. We've only been in charge for 12 months. So, you know, it's important that the group do improve on what they did last year. We haven't made too many signings, to be honest. So we've sort of inherited the team and inherited the club. So, yeah, they will admit that we do have a very attacking side. So goals is something that we will always get. It's just something that at the back we needed to try and tidy up on this season, which has, you know, worked a little bit for us. So, you know, but we do have tough games. I'll be honest, Louis gave us a tough game. So, always give us tough games. So, yeah, it's not been bad for him.
Yeah, we won't mention that, Jordan, that game.
Yeah, it was. Listen, I was good when the season was called off, because I'd always, you know, it's one of those where every team's played you. If you've played at home, and then it'd be nice to go and play everybody again, but at their place, because they'd be completely different games. You know, the outcomes may have been different. So I was looking forward to that, to be honest. But obviously, the decision was made to wait until next season.
I think the one the next talking point I want to go through, and I'll bring probably Louis in more on this because I think he's got more experience of the club involved, and that's Birmingham City. And there've been rumblings throughout the last few months, I think, or even longer. Players being unhappy with the facilities, games not being played at home. I think there was one game that was called off, if I remember correctly, because they wanted to play at St George's Park and they couldn't find £500 to play the game there. And there's the forfeiture of the game, I think, against Spurs. I mean, I'll give a little brief history about Birmingham because it's not a new small club. Looking on Wikipedia, they were formed back in 1968. They've won plenty and come runners up in plenty of things like the Super League, a couple of times runners up in the last 10 years. FA Cup, they've won that. They've been runners up once again in the last 10 years. The League Cup, runners up a couple of times. And the Women's National League Cup, runners up as well. So they are, and talking to people, as not just Birmingham fans, but opposition fans, they're a tough outfit with a lot of good players. And so we've heard a lot, some grievances from the players. A letter came out, it was sent to the board. The board not happy that it was leaked to the press. Press have been all over it. The board have come out with a statement as well, admitting a little bit, but having a pop at the same time. So there's a lot going on there. I'm going to ask Louis, because I think Louis has a connection with, to give us a little bit more information about that.
Yeah, I was at Birmingham. That was my first club. I was reserve manager there for 3 years under the Marcus and Dave Parker era. And it's close. It's a club close to my heart. It's quite sad, really, how it's happened, and it hasn't just really been this season. I think it's been going on for a couple of seasons where there's been a lot of players leaving, and that's got to be telling. Like some of the players, you look at Keris Harrop, who's left, who's done 20 years at the club. There's no way she would have left, in my opinion, if there wasn't things going on in the background. Charlie Wellings, who's a local girl, come all the way through from the RTC again. I can't see why, or Meg Sargent going to Bristol. I can't see why some of these players would leave if there wasn't problems. And it's really sad because Birmingham have always been a big club in women's football. Like you said, they've been close on a couple of times in terms of the Super League, coming up as runners-up or runners-up in certain cup competitions. So it's really sad, and I think what's kind of happened is people that really care at the club at the top are no longer in charge. So I think when I was there, you had Steve Shipwaite and Tim Andrews, who was running the club and had a real passion and vision for the women's section. You had good coaches in terms of David Marcus and Mark Skinner, who again really cared for the club and had the club at heart. Players that really cared about the club, and some really good players in the time I was there. You had the likes of Joe Potter, Jade Moore, some really top talent, and they were always producing top talent for the RTC as well. And then, so it's sad, but also for the fans. Like, even though now I'm at West Brom, the fans still keep in contact. They still regard you as one of their own. They still look after you. So I still get messages. I had messages last week around the FA Cup from people. So I think of like the fans that are loyal in terms of like Kaz and Stacey, who are very passionate about the club. Craig, I know as well, and Laurie. There's so many passionate people around Birmingham. It's such a sad time to see. And then for the letter, I think it's probably been brewing for, like I said, a while. I don't think it's just been this season, and it's such a shame for someone like Carla, who's doing a fantastic job this season. I think they were all written off at the start of the season. She's come in and absolutely transformed the team. I think she must have had like 8 players at the start of the season. So for me, already she can keep them up. Manager of the season. I know Emma Hayes has done a good job, and Matt Beard's now doing a great job at Bristol. But for what Carla's had to be put through, and I think it's coming to a light to what people are seeing. Credit to her and credit to the players for sticking together. And when obviously the statement come out in social media, the players' unity they showed on the Monday coming out on socials, and then obviously the backing of the whole game, because everyone realised that in terms of the women's game's growing, it's important that the clubs grow with them, and it's not just a tick in the box exercise for the men saying, yeah, we've got a women's section, you have to back it. And for Blues that have so much history in the women's game, it's such a sad situation to see. So hopefully, there's a little bit of pressure put on Birmingham, and they sort their act out and really back the women's, and they stay up and they can hopefully progress and still be one of the top leading teams within the women game the game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way finances are changing in the game, it's costing more, I guess, to run a women's team because players are now becoming, most of them are professional. They deserve a professional's wage. There was talk that some of the players at Birmingham weren't even paid the minimum wage. They're saying, no, that's not it's not true. So the cost of running a women's Super League team obviously is more expensive, and it's going to get more expensive with the TV deal. Hopefully, that will help them out and alleviate some of the costs. But do you see it becoming more and more difficult for, let's say, independent teams who are not attached to a men's team, or clubs that are not attached to a really big club who can afford to put the right financial and other resources into a team? Is it going to be more and more difficult for them to punch above the weight and get to the Women's Super League?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think if you're not attached now to a men's club that are willing to back it, I think in terms of the FA criteria, they look for that when they're giving out licenses and so on. So if you think of like a Yeovil in the past and Donny Bells that probably haven't had the financial backing, they've pulled away. I think definitely that's the way it's going. And Super League, you look in terms of the top teams now, or the top men's clubs who have them resources to really finance it. But Birmingham have never had money. They've never been in a position where they've had the biggest budget. They've always punched above their weight. They've always been the underdogs, and they've kind of always enjoyed that in terms of my time there. I remember Dave Parker and Marcus and Steve, they always enjoyed being the underdogs because they always defied people and they always got the results. And, they're always that underdog mentality and they pulled through it. So Blues have never had it. But for me, it's just the basics in terms of what was being revealed. It's just the basics which professionals should have. They're not asking for too much in terms of having the resources of like Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal, but to have a functioning physio room, that's a basic which should be happening in all professions, especially as well being at the training ground. You would think, and I know COVID obviously is an issue with the gym and so on. I think they mentioned that in the statement, but regards to wages, not having full-time assistant coach within the Super League, that's a bit of a worry. That if Blues cannot fund that, but I definitely think how the women's game is going, you have to be attached to a men's club, and also the higher you'll be and the better you'll be is how much the men are willing to back it. But like I said, for me, it can't just be a tick in the box exercise for the men's club to say, yeah, we've got a women's section. It's got to have people that know the women's game. So if I look at Blues, they don't have a Tim Andrews, they don't have a Steve Shipway making decisions, being the link between the men's and the women's. It's kind of taken over by the men's, and it's like they don't understand women's football. It's different. It's not the same as men's. It's football, but it's different as well. So they've got to understand that. So that would be the big disappointment. I think Blues are kind of losing that identity of people that really care about the club. Like I said, I feel for Carla. She's done a fantastic job this season.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Jay in and then Jordan after Jay. Just to ask you how important it's been for you to have. Obviously, you look at the men's club I think you're attached to, the big clubs. So how important is it to you, and how do you think your women's team have benefited from that relationship?
Yeah, well, when I joined 5 years ago now, we were owned by a guy called Mick Williams, who was one of the presidents who ultimately saved Portsmouth. Obviously, the history of Pompey, they were hours away from liquidation, and the fans saved the club. So in terms of a club, I didn't realise until I come down here 6 years ago how big Portsmouth is. It's the beating heart of the city down here. You go anywhere, they talk football. They know who you are, and that's Portsmouth, and it is phenomenal. And then we kind of come under the umbrella of the football club a few years back, and it's just given us sustainability. That's the biggest thing. We don't overspend. That the men's club have probably learned from previous exploits where they don't throw a load of money. They've got to organically grow, and there's got to be a sustainability, which I agree. I can understand now teams with massive financial power are always going to be the teams at the top. But I also think you give credit to teams like Durham, who have been there in the Championship. They have a sustainable model, and they could potentially go full time. They've got that model, but very few clubs have got a model like that. I know Coventry United have got a model, and there are other clubs there that have got models, but how long can they sustain before their millionaire backer kind of pulls out? These are just the questions that when we had with Mick, if he pulled out, our club's gone. And as a women's club, we were really close to folding as a women's football club. But the thing with Portsmouth Football Club is they didn't take over it because they felt there's a tick in the box. They took over it because the people there, Mark Catlin and especially Anna Mitchell, they care about women's football. They have a care about it. So when you've got someone who's making decisions, who cares about the women's game, and I think I've said it before, it's like same sport, different game, and it is different. There are differences between it, and as soon as you've got people that are making executive decisions that care for your future, we don't train at the men's training ground because the men's training ground can't house us. It simply can't. They don't have floodlights. They don't have the facilities. So what do they go and do? They find us the next best thing. Having at Waterlooville, a National League team who've got a 3G pitch. Right, we're going to go put you there for 2 nights a week, and we want to go on for a 3rd night next year. That's what I'm pushing. Every year you can push it with a football club. But now they're going, well, if we can't do this, we want to do the next best thing. And it's a duty of care. They provide a duty of care. They have to for women's footballers. And I think they've just got to look at these as, and I feel like Pompey look at us as staff and players. There's nothing women's about it. These are our players, whether they're male or female, they're our players, they're our staff. We've got a duty of care. We will provide within our means. And don't get me wrong, I've asked for a lot of things and I've not got everything I wanted, but that's because the growth of the club is paramount to maintain. We keep making levels each year. But there's a care and there's a passion and there's a hunger to take the club up, whether that's through a movement application, whether that's through winning the league. I know for a fact I'm at an ambitious club that want to go up, and we want to do it the right way.
Fantastic. Jordan, what about Huddersfield? How do they treat you guys at Huddersfield?
So our relationship is one that's still developing, should we say. So many seasons now with from previous managers, my understanding is that they've had meetings with Town and back and forth have tried to come up with how we can bridge the gap between what might be seen as men and women's setups and try and bring that into a sort of a one club type of feel. Since I've been involved with the team, it's still something that we need to heavily speak about. So the intention from both sides is to have meetings throughout the summer. So if you look at the teams that are in our league at the moment and the relationships that some of those sides have got now with their men's team and recent announcements of clubs, becoming as one and having investments, etc., is something that, we want to try and push for. So with the applications for the FA and things like that around promotion and trying to go up, we stayed away from it this year. We didn't put it in. We didn't try and apply because we felt that in terms of finances and stability, we weren't ready for anything like that just yet. So if you're ever going to go for a promotion, for us, it's about being stable. So it's not about getting there and operating for a season. It's about getting there. And if you're going to go there, you've got to stay there. And if you can't stay there, then you can't make the jump, because if it's an unsuccessful year and you end up coming back down, you're at a loss and you're probably in a worse position than what you were, prior to going up. So if you were ever to go up, we had to be in a position of stability. And where we're at as a club at the moment is the gap's too wide for us to think about making that jump. So we had to tell, obviously, the players and staff that even though when we started the season that we wanted to go and win the league and go and try and push for promotion, that ultimately we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it based on the criteria that was being asked. There's still so many things that we need to try and put in place just so that we have a little bit more consistency. So we do train at the men's training ground, but it's only one session out of the 2. So that'd be something we'd look at trying building. So could we train there, twice as opposed to just once? Looking at where we play our home games. And then obviously if we do ever try and make that jump again, then it'd be all down to the financial side of it. Could we be stable at that level? And at this moment in time, we decided that we couldn't. So for us, we had to, hold off on that application. And it's a position that, as you said, some clubs find themselves in. the relationship between the men's side is so important, because with that investment and with that support, it takes the club to a whole new level. The most recent ones that have made an announcement is obviously with Burnley. Fylde have been given great support from their setup, and they have got teams in and around us that are doing that. We're completely different. So in terms of what we have access to, what we've had to maybe manage over the 12 months, even with all the COVID situations, so finding venues, etc. And it's something that hopefully we want to put right for the start of next season, because as you said, the game's growing, clubs are growing, teams are growing, and in all honesty, it will only continue to grow. So for us to bridge that gap is one of our main priorities over this summer period.
Yeah, I mean, following on from that, obviously there's issues with injuries. I think that's one thing that you've seen in the National League. You've even seen in the Championship. I remember players who get injured and the clubs can't afford, or they haven't got sufficient insurance, or they can't afford for operations. There's a Watford player, was it last year or year before, who had, I think, a cruciate ligament injury. She said, the club can't pay for it. I can't afford it myself. It's 15 grand, this operation. If I have to wait on the NHS, it's going to be 12 months. And then I can start my rehab. That's probably 2 years out of the game. I'm 23 years old. I might as well retire. So in each of your clubs, or in general, do you think there's enough support for players? Because for injuries, for mental health issues, or any other issues that you hear about at, let's say, bigger clubs, but it's the same for everybody. So are there any problems that you've got, or other clubs you think have got in the system? And I'll take anybody on that.
I'll jump in if you want. So with injuries for us, obviously we do have a lot of players sort of in their latter stages, if you like. So we've got 29-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 32-year-olds, sort of, and they'll always comment on, I don't know how long I've got left in my legs, how long I can get out of them, going forward. For us with injuries, it's one of those where, unfortunately, a lot of the players are left sort of to go through that process outside of the club. So what we try and do is we have physios on board that, can give them programs to do, can support them in that sense, are there at training. But we also have formed relationships with local sort of rehabilitation businesses, so that if we do have injured players, we can assign them to said centres and they go there and they get the treatments. Now, it might not be, at cost for them, so they could get it at, a discounted price and things like that, and something that we try and help them for, because we can't physically cover, costs of treatments that they've got to go through. But what we can do is provide support as much as we can that doesn't cost anything to us as a club. So if they need somebody to support them, alongside the process. So for us, if we've had players that are injured, we've had physios that have been in contact, we've had our nutritionists that get in contact, they put plans in place for them and they support them from home. And then obviously, as I've said, we have relationships with local rehabilitation centres so that we can assign them there and give them that treatment. Other than that, we're pretty sort of, limited to how we can support them beyond that with sort of what we have. And I don't know if it's any different for the other guys, but that's sort of the best we can do for them. And the benefit we have is because a lot of the girls have been around for quite a while, they know a lot of people. So they've already got their own physio, or one of the family members is part of a medical team or something like that. So there's always someone there for them, so they're never left without, which unfortunately for them isn't ideal, but for us it gives them that support and recovery process that they need.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about this now. I've got lots of ideas. I'm going to bring in Jay and ask the same sort of question about injuries around players and how much support your club can give. And at grassroots, is there anything that can be done to help players more? I don't know anything about insurance. Is there something that can be done that would make things easier and better for the players?
Yeah, I think there's always ways across the board at any department level that you can increase and you can get better. I think injuries and physios have always been the one thing that I've constantly spoken about year on year at our football club. We push everything, but it's a specialist position. A physio is a specialist position. And in order to bring a physio into your football club, if you can get one voluntary, let me know how you've done that, because that's a phenomenal achievement. So we've got sports therapists. We brought in a PhD student who kind of runs our high performance department, looks at the S&C, looks at the physio kind of side of things. We've got interns that are obviously sports therapist interns, nutritionists. So we brought in a lot to support the girls. Obviously, there's only so much a sports therapist can do in regards to their course and on their kind of, there's a glass ceiling before they can really diagnose injuries. So we've got links at the football club, the head of medical at Portsmouth, and we can utilise him. Obviously, through the COVID situation, it's been very difficult, and that's understandable. But we've got good links there, and we are talking with, as Jordan mentioned, we've got a number of local rehabilitation hubs and centres in the area that we're communicating with to try and give these players the best care in terms of their physical, the physical side. The mental side, we've just added a chaplaincy to the football club. So we've got a chaplain now with Chaplaincy UK. A woman called Debs has just joined our football club. She offers something a little bit different to what a psychologist would. Kind of an external soundboard for players, staff, someone that we've needed this week. I'll be honest with you. I've been on the phone to her, and God, have I needed her. Saves me going on to the wife about how it just getting my emotions out of the situation. But yeah, she's come on part of Chaplaincy UK, volunteer chaplain that comes to all our training and our matches. An external person that players can go and communicate. And we've got a current player, Rosie McDonald, who is unfortunately sustained an MCL injury in the last game before the second lockdown, before the third one. And, even then I'm losing my mind on when that was. And she's come under a lot of support with the chaplain. So she's been communicating with, and we've tried to give her the best rehabilitation program and support her the best we can with the resources we've got. But ultimately, I think clubs, that's where the elitism probably bracket comes in, because as soon as you're talking about application criteria, that jump to championship, then you start to get financial support from the FA to make sure you've got a doctor and you've got full-time, or you've got physios and you've got X, Y, and Z full-time S&C. So the jumps, I feel like maybe Jordan and Louis, they might agree or disagree, but I feel like we as head coaches and managers, we've got the responsibility to make sure we've implemented these things in place. So we go out and try and bring in interns from universities or bring in loads of volunteers, but only when you get to the next level that with the club and with the FA, then offer you a load of support and resources to make sure you've got them in your football club. Yeah. The jump is.
Yeah, sorry. And Louis as well, how does it work at the Baggies? I'm just thinking that's the first part. And the second part is when you've got lots of clubs around a big city like Birmingham or the West Midlands, is it possible for clubs to get together, the smaller clubs who can't afford a physio, to actually, band together and part pay a physio each, so that they've got one person who can dedicate something like, for argument's sake, 7 or 8 hours a week to their players? So that's a two-part question.
Yeah, regards to helping clubs out and sharing, say, physio or treatment, that doesn't really happen. It's kind of like, well, that's your physio, that's your club, that's your kind of section. You look after your own house and get that in order, kind of thing. It happens for an instance, if I've dual contract to play at Birmingham or Leicester and so on, and they're under the books of Birmingham or Leicester, they will get their treatment there because they've got better resources to treat the player, even though we're loaning them or it's a dual contract. Similar to what both guys said, really, it's a big thing around resources and what teams at this moment in time can afford in terms of paying for operations and so on. That doesn't happen really at our level. The clubs don't really fund for them. If I think to an injury that happened last year against Fylde, our striker fell on her back and the game got abandoned. We had to wait for an ambulance to come on and so on. But because it was quite big on social media, the men's doctor at the club got in contact and said we'll treat and we'll get her in. So that was, you know, a big step forward for us. That, you know, the men's club doctor reached out and she was able to go to the training ground and get some treatment. So that was a big thing for us last season. But again, we've had players that have had to go for operations and wait on the NHS, and we offer that support for them after the operation and before the operation, where it's mental or rehab programs as well. So pretty similar to what the other two have said, really. I think that's common practice within the level we're at, and obviously, like Jay said, as you go higher up the league, there's more licensing and criteria you have to meet. But regards to sharing best practice around clubs, I wouldn't say that kind of happens. I've never been reached out by a team saying tier 4 or 5 or 6 around any treatment or so on. Like you said, it's quite difficult in Birmingham because there's so many clubs as well. It's kind of everyone looks after their own shit, really.
Yeah, something I'll think about. I'm sure there has to be better ways of doing things going forwards for player welfare in terms of injuries. Moving on to something a little bit happier for an East Midlands club, Louis, Leicester City. They got promotion last week. I mean, how do you guys feel looking at their story and what they've achieved? Is it 12 wins on the bounce to get promotion to the Super League?
Yeah, no, it's great for them, to be fair. Like, I have a good relationship with Jono, the manager there. He's been at the club for 7 years, and that's quite a unique club in terms of the chairman's the father. He's the dad. You've got the son as the manager. You've got one of the sisters, a general manager. The other sister's captain and a coach. So it's quite unique that the Morgan family took it on 7 years ago, and how now it's embedded with the men's side. And I think Leicester, a lot of praise need to be put to Leicester in terms of, again, we're talking about the links with men's, and I think Leicester have done a fantastic job over the last 12 months. The men have moved into a new training ground. They gave the women's the old training ground, and that's solely their place where they work. I think that, you know, that's fantastic. And I think that might be the first women's club, definitely outside the Super League, to have their own training base that they can call home. They've obviously gone professional. They've gone 12 wins on the bounce. They've also, I think, credit needs to give to the recruitment as well. If anyone thought, like Liverpool, for example, and Jay's a Liverpool fan and I am, you know, we obviously look out for the women's side as well. But obviously, when they got relegated, you probably thought they were certain to come up. But because of their players, they've still got like the Mal Lawley, an international player. You know, they've got such talented players at Liverpool. But Leicester are 12 points above them. And the recruitment's been fantastic. They've gone full time. You know, I'm really pleased for them. I think they're doing things the right way. And I think it's like I said, they took it on 7 years. Slowly, they've built it up. I remember being on the sideline against John in my first season at West Brom before they were successful in the application. Then they slowly built a sustainable championship side. And then this season, they've really gone for it, but they've done it in the right way. Moved into the training ground. They've got their own complex, gone professional, looked after, and got recruitment, I think, spot on. So really pleasing for East Midlands, but also the Midlands, to get another club within that top tier. It's really shining a light and giving a lot of opportunities for players within that Midlands. So that's pleasing. So now I'm delighted for all of them.
Fantastic. I'm going to move on to briefly talk about international football. And I don't know if any of your clubs, you've got any international players. I've been watching a lot of the Northern Ireland international team lately. I watched the game last night. It was fantastic to see a lot of players who, let's be honest, most of the players, if you watch the Women's Super League, you'd never have heard of these players. So if you're going to go and play for someone like Wales or Northern Ireland or even Scotland, they are going down to, let's say, the lower league. So as I said, I don't know if you guys have got anybody who plays internationally or has the potential to play internationally for whichever country. But I mean, how big a thing would that be at your respective clubs to have that? And does that complicate things as well? How much would that complicate things? I'll start with Jay.
No, I think a few people are mentioning it now about the game's growing, and as the game grows, you're going to start to see players dropping into the National League, because obviously the influx of quality foreign players coming into the Super Leagues, meaning there's an influx dropping down. But also a lot of clubs now are investing or are are supporting their youth setups to try and bring players up and develop players. We've only recently brought our development team back, and we've already got probably 2 or 3 young English players that are slowly on the books now at the England Youth Internationals. Obviously, we've got Brighton one side of us, Southampton the other side of us, and Reading above us. So we're in a triangle of top elite teams who have got a lot of quality young individual players. But from a first team, I think it's supporting them. We've got a girl who's half Hungarian, so we've reached out to the Hungarian FA for probably over 6 months to a year now, because I genuinely believe, after watching a few clips of the Hungarian national team, she'd be an asset to them, and she meets their criteria with a Hungarian passport, etc. So we've had ongoing discussions with that, and to see potentially one of my players playing at the elite level, the international stage, would give me a massive satisfaction. It would be like brilliant, even to have a minute support in her development. Most of it would be from her, but even just to support that would be brilliant. And we're slowly seeing that now. We play Watford. The all-time Welsh goal scorer Helen Ward plays for Watford. So I know a lot of clubs, when they see the fixture list, they're trying to figure out whether Helen Ward's going to be with Wales or with Watford when they're playing them. But I think the more and more we see it, the more it's just great for the National League. And maybe there might come a stage where we are having to call for international breaks at National League level, because we're having, I know there's a lot of teams who have a lot of young players that do go away. We play Cardiff, and half their squad either plays for the Welsh international first team or their youngsters, and they fight constantly to try and get them international breaks embedded in their fixture schedule. Otherwise, you go in there and they can't field either a fully strong team or field a team at all. So it's going to be an interesting one to see when the years grow and the likes of Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, they're emerging and bringing talent from the National League, how it may affect us and our fixture scheduling.
Yeah, bringing Jay for the same question, whether you've got anybody like Jordan, bringing Jordan, like you've got anybody like Jay has, who could play for an international team, or how you see it developing going forwards.
So for us, we currently don't have any international players on our books. We do have a lot of players, younger players in particular, that I feel could easily play at a level above. It might just be a case that they've not been approached at the moment, or but I definitely know that there's a couple of our players that are under people's radar for definitely championship level. It would have been nice to try and give them that opportunity, but we have got also players that are realistic in their own development. So the demand of playing above, with the personal circumstances of those as players and how long they might have left in terms of their playing sort of careers. Like, a lot of my older players know their limits, and they know that what they're good at and what they're not good at, whereas some of the younger players now that are coming through could quite easily go and play at that level, which is why we've been consistent in our performances. And if we did have players that could go and play at an international level, then by all means, this is something that we'd want to push and give them. We had one in our squad last season, but that was under a different manager. So we had Olivia Clark, who plays in goal for Wales. So she was with us last year, and she was the only representative that we had on our books at the time, which now obviously she moved on, which leaves us with currently none on our books. In terms of players, though, it'd be something that we want to try and develop them towards. At the end of the day, even though we are in the National League, there's a lot of good players in this league that have either come down or could go and play up, and that's why the games are so competitive between each other. And realistically, some of these players could quite easily get dragged up to the next league and improve those standards. And as a manager in the National League, my job would not be to hold their players back, but to encourage them to go and take themselves to the next level. And obviously, our job is just to try and take them as far as we can whilst we've got them. We've had some of the players earlier on in the season go and trial at championship clubs, but come back. So it's not necessarily being the right thing for them, because if you go up to the championship, then you're asking a lot of the players personally. So in terms of jobs, commitments, travel time, etc., they now have to start making personal decisions for themselves. So if they're looking at their work life outside of our training, and then you're asking them to now start travelling a lot more on a weekend, further distances, extra training sessions. Can they physically commit to that? It's some of the reasons why players from our team haven't gone up to the next level, which is why they've stayed where they are. Some of them we said, well, we had one of the players out last year injured for pretty much the whole season. So come back to us, have a season with us, find your feet, get your confidence back, and then go and make the jump rather than doing it too soon and maybe putting yourself in a position where you're not quite ready for it yet. So come and play with us, get all your game time, then go and progress again. And obviously that will be a conversation potentially at the end of the season I'll be having with some of these players. If they can go and progress and they have that opportunity, then I wouldn't hold them back.
Yeah, bringing Louis as well. What's the situation at West Brom?
So we currently have an England under 17s goalkeeper in Poppy Bastop. We've dual contracted her with Birmingham just to get her some first team experience, because we feel the WSL Academy wouldn't challenge her enough. She needs that physical challenge and so on. So we've dual contracted her, and she's come on leaps and bounds this season. She's been put into some difficult games. I remember she played the first game of the season against Nottingham Forest and has been outstanding. And then since we've been back, and just before the lockdown, she was our number one. So she's done fantastic. She's gained that experience, but I'm realistic. I know she won't be with us long term. If we can keep her for another season, I think that'll be good for her development. But she's definitely good enough, in my opinion, to play at Championship as a number one. Just for her physical stature, if you looked at her, you wouldn't guess she was 16. So she's come on leaps and bounds. We've given her that experience, but also I think it's important that the clubs higher above, if they feel that they can loan out some of their better players to gain experience, I think that can work two ways. And my relationships with Leicester and Birmingham kind of has helped that, and we've taken players on loan just to help get confidence to go back up to the step above, or just to give them experience. So Poppy will be a future England keeper, but she definitely will be playing higher up in the next couple of years. But for this moment in time, her gaining experience is great for her and it's great for us. So it works both ways, which is good.
Yeah. And the final point on, or the final topic on today's show is around publicity, social media as well. I'm going to start off just by asking, the new TV deal, obviously the money's going to the Super League clubs and the Championship clubs, and obviously a lot of the football, up to 66 games a season, which is probably almost half the season, half the games in the season will be on either Sky or the BBC. In the past, a lot of games have been on the FA Player, and the FA Player has been there to fill in the gaps where, if you've got games on the BT or BBC, FA Players fills in the gaps in the Super League, occasionally in the Championship. Going forwards, would you like to see the FA Player have games from the national leagues? Lots of games, or just the odd game? Obviously they're going to be concerned about resources as well. But would you like to see more coverage of the national leagues?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the guys will agree as well that we have to do a lot of the legwork. So, a lot of things that, we do is probably more than what people would generally expect. It's, for us, it's constant all the time. And if it's something that we want to have in place, then we have to do it. So looking at the deal itself, you might question, why does it stop at the Championship? Why can't it come down one more at least, in terms of, if you look at the staff that are involved in this league, the experiences that you have, the players that you've got, you can't consider it as grassroots level based on the people and the players that are involved. It's just something that would give that league everything that it would need to be out there for people to see. The FA Player list has been great to promote women's football itself, to give other clubs, that exposure, and we want to try and give that opportunity. So, some of the guys have already had their games live streamed. They're giving people the opportunity to watch it. We've had to take that on ourselves and try and get that sorted. So we've been wanting to do it now for 12 months. We trialed it last week. It worked, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. but it's something that isn't cheap, and with some of the grounds that we go to, it's not always feasible. So it's something that, you know, as managers we want, and we have to try and do everything we can to put out there what's being given above, if you like. And it's a shame that it doesn't come down to us, but, you know, we've got to do what we can to ensure that we try and promote it as much as we can. Ultimately, like I said, doing more than what is probably expected of us, to be honest.
Yeah. What about you, Jay? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with everything that's been said. Then I think that the FA National League is not grassroots. It's not grassroots. Don't care what anyone says. It's not grassroots. It's sub-elite. This is in the strategical planning of the FA. We are labelled as the foundation of the professional game. If your foundation in your house sinks, your whole house goes from top to bottom. Your loft, your bedrooms upstairs, it goes. And that is the problem you're going to have. We've got arguably the biggest and best women's league in European, if not world football, in my opinion. Okay, now this is all my views. And I think if you're wanting to build that, you need to build it from the bottom. And I think when you're starting to look at county leagues and regional levels, like in the men's game, they're grassroots. The National League, it is called the FA National League. So we're part of the FA. So I think we're sub-elite, and I think the deal should come down, whether it comes down to tier 3 or comes down to tier 4. At the end of the day, there needs to be subsequent funding to support clubs for numerous reasons. One is, I believe all games should be video. They should be video for either FA purposes for exposure or to support the development of players and staff at this level. I tried to find footage on Cheltenham, and it took me weeks and weeks to find any footage. Me as a manager or a head coach, for my personal development on my coaching badges, and for my players and for Cheltenham, they can get as much footage on us as possible. But then we can utilise that footage to derive game plans, to support players, to show players, to educate them on the game, because it's coming more tactically fluid, on adapting within game and supporting them. And the analytical side of it is one thing that needs to drop down into our level, and it would support us. Plus, if the games were live streamed on an FA player, the exposure, especially through COVID, the exposure, we had over 800 people watch our game. And our average attendances have been 250, 300. So 500 people have gone, do you know what, I might watch that game. And hopefully they enjoyed it and they saw what the women's game's about at our level. But I feel like there are certain teams that, and I've got to watch my words now, but there are certain teams at our level that have been kicking the can for a few years now and have got away with it because the professionalism is not at the same level as a lot of other teams at our level. And they wouldn't be able to do this without the support of the FA through a financial deal or whatever to then be able to live stream games for everyone. But I think it has a wider impact on not just exposure for fans, but has a wider impact on the development of coaches and players. And the way you can basically play tactical chess like the men's game. And even in the Champ, I think they had a software called Huddle, where they were all able to go on Huddle, find different footages, and you can derive game plans. And the game just becomes a lot more intense. It becomes a lot more competitive. And then you'll start to see teams improving and developing tenfold. And it needs to happen, in my opinion. There needs to be something that comes in and goes, this is happening, especially at our level.
Yeah, I'm bringing Louis as well. Same question, Louis.
Yeah, it's similar to what the guys said. Personally, I'm a little bit worried that the two top elite leagues are pulling away from the National League in Tier 3. As a Tier 3 manager, I think a lot of topics we've discussed today, it comes around finances. And if we're not getting any finances at all, when it comes to them applications to go into the Championship, we are going to find it difficult because they seem to be getting, the top league are getting a lot of the money, but I know it's filtering down a little bit to the Championship. Well, from them getting a little bit of financial money and for us to get none, I think, again, is just bridging that gap even more. I think, my personal opinion, I think at least one game a week could be on that FA player from the Southern and the Northern League to help promote the league. It doesn't have to be every game, but there's no reason why one game a week couldn't be put on that, especially next year as more the top 2 level games, or especially the top level, will be on TV. That's again a chance and an opportunity to maybe show Tier 3. So if, for example, if they showed West Brom v Huddersfield, that game that we had this season, I guarantee people would have enjoyed it. It was a good spectacle. It was a good game for a neutral. and again for the Southern League. So I think I would be for 1 game a week at least being on the FA player, especially as some of the games are now going to be on TV from the elite level. But again, it comes to exposure. The biggest thing to help drive and push the game on is exposure, and is getting people to visually see it. Because some people have never been to a women's game. It's fantastic that Jay had 800 people watch the live stream, and the amount of live streams I saw last week advertised was fantastic. And I think that will carry on. I do think that will pick up, and that will continue next year. So that's fantastic, and that will hopefully transmit into people coming to the turnstiles and actually attending the games when they can, and then that just helps grow the game, helps grow Tier 3, and like Jay said, to call us grassroots is, it's quite embarrassing with the level of coaching you've got within this level, the level of players. I think it's quite disrespectful to them. We've talked about some internationals being at this level, but to call them grassroots, I think he's wrong. So for me, the top 2 leagues are growing. They're doing really well in terms of, yes, the sponsor's going to really kick them on, and it's going to help the clubs like Birmingham, Bristol, who don't have that financial power, but it's going to make Man City, Chelsea even stronger, even harder to catch. But the teams that are transitioning from Tier 3 to Championship, it's making it even more difficult if you do not have the men's backing that are willing to pump that money in. So it's good, but I think it has its flaws really for Tier 3 clubs.
I'm sorry to jump in just quick, but I think a lot of what's happening now is
I'm just fiddling away. I'm just trying to. Sorry, Matt. Yeah.
No, we're just saying we're not throwing mud, but there are a lot of questions, but no one really has provided any solutions. And I think now as National League, I know there's a group where we can maybe come together as head coaches in the National League and actually come up with some solutions. So for me, a solution is, and you might agree or disagree, finances come down to our level, then you get finances for where you finish in your league. So Huddersfield right now are top of the Northern League, then they will get a financial package for finishing first all the way through the bottom. So your success, you basically get an income via your success, and that money can be reinvested into your football club. Likewise, if there's the FA Cup money, and I know we've spoken about it loads, but there needs to be a solution. And I know from Portsmouth Football Club, we've got our chairman who's already in contact with the FA on what solution could be in place for the FA Cup. But you're not telling me. I know you two, the 2 teams up here, Huddersfield and West Brom, they could end up going all the way to the 4th or 5th round because of the route they're on. That should generate a massive amount of income for their football club, for the success they've had. And that money going back into their football club could potentially offer the sustainability to Huddersfield Town to progress into the next tier without asking too much of their men's club. They can do it above board, but the FA now need to find solution, and we need to find solution from a financial point of view, not just keep questioning. I've got loads of questions, but I want to find answers now and go, well, here's the answers for you. What are your thoughts on this? Because you be proactive at this level now instead of being reactive.
Yeah. I think, Jay, to be fair, you made a good point. You get deep in this competition. I think last week, if you won the game and you got through, you got £1,000. But depending on who your next draw is, you could be spending that already on a coach, depending on where that's gone. So you've made no income really. So it definitely needs looked at. I think the prize money, definitely needs looking at. Like I said, you get through to the next round, you spent it by your next game because of the journey you might have to do.
We obviously, because of we got kicked out of the competition. We were granted with the losers pot, so we didn't get a financial hit, which fair play. But that losers pot of £250 basically paid for our live streaming. So we paid with our losers pot. We paid to live stream it to get it out to 800 people. So ultimately, the game come at a cost to obviously house the game. Haven't and with no fans in. So we've been hit with a little bit of a financial outlay. And
when I spoke to a club this week, they're looking at spending about £600 just on the travel costs to an away game. Let's say it's about 220 miles or whatever, 200 miles. That's a fair bit of money for a National League club to shell out for a game that, you say if they lose, the FA Cup run has been very expensive for them if they lose that game. It's a difficult one. I'm just trying to work out how many games you need to live stream in National League. So if you've got 20, if I'm right, 24 teams in each league, that's about 550 games, 552 games, I think, if I'm right, per league. So you're looking at about 1,650 games. And if each is going to cost, sorry guys, £250, let's say, to live stream, you're looking at over £400,000 to live stream every game, and that's if it's only 250 quid, so it's a fair bit of money. And I think that's one of the issues in the Super League. You've got 12 clubs, in the Championship you've got 11 clubs. It's not a lot in total. In the National Leagues you've got 72. So if you're giving money to each of those 72, how much money do you have to give them to actually make a difference? If you say, well, here's £1,000, is that going to make a lot of difference? Here's 10 grand. Is that going to make a lot of difference? That 10 grand's cost £750,000. So, and they're only putting in 7 to 8 million a year. So it's I can see why they're not doing it because of the financial situation. That it's just going to cost them money, and they don't. But I guess you just wait. Oh, they don't see the benefit. The BBC and the and Sky, they don't see the benefit of doing that. If they could see they could make money from doing it, they'd be doing it. I think that's pretty straightforward, and it might just be that the National League has to do something centrally to promote itself, and whether that can come from central funds and say, right, we'll put in, for argument's sake, £500,000 into, and I don't know if the money's there, into doing something so we can live stream every single game. And if fans don't go, we can at least get some money from the live streaming, for instance. Like you say, if you've got, I don't know what money's involved, whether the live stream was free for fans or not. But if you're charging people, for argument's sake, of £5 and you can get a few hundred fans watching a game, it might be able to pay for itself. And that way, at least it might be cost neutral at the end of the day, but you've also got this huge resource. If I'm right with my 1,656 games a season, you've got a resource for all the National League managers to have a look and to use, and for the players to use. So it's going to be a massive benefit, as you say, as an analytical tool. So we should have. I'm not going to say it yet, but we should. In the next few weeks, we're trying to get somebody from the National League itself. I've been trying for the last few weeks to get someone to come on and have a chat with us, but right now it's a busy time of the season, and we're hopeful that we can do that. And then we, might get some of you guys back on and say, right, just throw your questions on, get some chairman on, and say, let's talk to them and see how they can do the best for the clubs and the players and the fans going forwards, and not be left behind because all the money's in the Super League and the Championship.
I think they have a duty of care, though, and I think a lot of sticks gone to the National League, and I think a lot of unfair sticks gone to them. There are a lot of volunteers that run that league, and I know they've gone through a whole restructuring of their league. Of their league board. I believe someone from Huddersfield Town's on it, from a league representative, and someone from Southampton, and they've announced that, I think it was yesterday, and that they're looking at ideas and from an agenda point of view of getting as many ideas from us to create solutions, and from the rumour mill is they are banging their head against the wall with the FA, and they are trying their hardest to support the National League clubs, but they're doing as much as they can, and having spoken to a few people there, it is hard, and I do think they're getting a lot of stick where it needs to be directed towards the people even higher, because as Louis said before, the fear is the two elite leagues are going to start flying away. They're going to start moving, and the bridge between the National League and the Championship is going to be drastic, and is going to then, the sustainability of football clubs and trying to get clubs into that elite level is going to be near impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a media or content creation point of view, working with National League clubs has been fantastic. We get every week now, this is our second episode, 3 managers on. Couldn't dream of that at the Championship or the Super League. If we want to go to games, I mean, and it's a separate issue for another time. If we want to send a reporter to a game, okay, it's not all clubs have got the resources to even respond to your emails, and that we're still waiting for responses to last weekend's emails to try and get people to games. And we look at it, because all our people are volunteers. We look at it as an opportunity for the clubs involved to raise their profile just a little bit, raise the profile of the managers and the players. We're not going to provide a massive platform and thousands of people are going to be watching our stuff. No, but we're doing a little bit, and clubs I think need to try and engage as well. But if we want to talk to you guys, we can. If we want to go to games, we can ask. Some clubs will reply, and we can go and actually report on a game. And it might just bring that club or that competition or that match to another 400 or 500 people, not live streaming, but doing some reporting, and that creates more interest in the game itself. If we want to talk to championship clubs, we can still do that. And I think it depends on the size of your organisation. If you want to talk to the Super League clubs, it's and I found out this week, it's extremely difficult. If you want to do some broadcasting or even going to press conferences, it's extremely difficult. So it might be, and one thing we're focusing on is more on the National League because of the accessibility of the clubs and the players and the managers. That's my little venting at the system. But it's if you want to, people. It's not meant to be about me this show, but if people want to talk about promoting the women's game, then you promote the women's game. You don't promote the Super League or the Lionesses, and it feels a bit of a tick box, the Championship, and then forget about everything else. If you want to promote the women's game, you promote the women's game from the top level to grassroots to any level. And this is the final point. If anybody wants to come back on that before we close the show, because it's gone on a lot longer than we expected, but that's down to having good guests. So if anybody wants to finish on that point,
I was just
about promoting the women's game.
I was just going to add the point that you mentioned in terms of it's hard to access the top clubs, which for me is a little bit shocking, and it's a bit like how is that possible? Because if you compare it to men's football, it's usually like where you can speak to the players after the games, they'll hang around, sign autographs, you can have a conversation. That's what kind of makes women's football unique, where you can have that interaction with the players. So I find that a little bit like I'm a bit shocked that even happens. That women's football should not lose the connection with fans and people that are interested in the game, because one, it's helping growing it, but that's what makes it unique. We couldn't go down to Anfield and go and speak to Jurgen Klopp. It doesn't happen. He won't wait around for us. But players, if you can get like the Ellen White to hang around and just have a 2-minute conversation, it makes it more of a special moment. It makes it more unique. So for me, I'm a bit worried about where that elite level's going. If I'm honest,
I can't say the name of the club, but to get access, it's for a new or small organisation, it's impossible unless the club, if they want you to go through their normal setup to get accreditation, it's impossible. Whereas other clubs, they say, yeah, come on board. We want as much publicity as possible, and they're happy to work with you. And so it makes it really difficult. And, to go to a volunteer and say, you're going to have to join this organisation and this organisation, jump through these hoops, it's going to cost you maybe 250 quid of your own money to get accreditation, to be able to go to club, just to watch a press conference on Zoom. You're at some, I've got to go to somebody and say, you're 19 years old, you're a student, it's going to cost you this much to do it, and you're doing it voluntarily. And so how do we help people coming through, outside of the big organizations? And it's not meant to be a fight against the system, but the system is for the big boys, big clubs, big media organizations. If you're new, you're small, you've not got a lot of money behind you, it makes it very, very difficult. And I don't see how that's promoting the women's game. You promote, across the board. Rant over. It's not meant to be. Guys, I'm going to say massive thanks for coming on today. It's been, Saturday morning, having a chat about these things. I hope the viewers find it interesting, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it enough to come on another time, maybe during the summer or before the start of the season, next season. So thanks a lot, Louis, Jordan, and Jay.
No problem.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.